Hey guys, it's Woody the Unexceptional Gamer, and this video is not so much about the gameplay, but I will set it up to some extent. I had lost the previous game, and not only had I lost, but I had gone negative, and yeah, that's somewhat understandable. I'm playing against a lot of real strong players. Some of these names you'll recognize from YouTube. Undisputed you might not recognize, but he's on my Game Battles team, and he's a really good player. And we just went into a private lobby and played against each other using Game Battles rules, because you know Modern Warfare, it can be a little noob-tubey and junky and frustrating, and so we just went into a lobby and had some, I guess what you'll call casual game battle scrims type thing. And I had lost the previous game, did poorly, so here I am with my try-hard pants on, my trusty AK. Not using a silencer because, of course, the other team's organized and it's worthless because they just call out your position as soon as you shoot it. Anyway, it's a game battles game, try-hard pants. I'm playing defense on Cap the Flag. That's the game commentary. The other thing I wanted to talk about was all the jobs I had. So I've had more than one subscriber ask me to talk about my career history, and some of it's a little bit colorful, so I thought I'd talk about that. My first job ever was at 13 years old. So I actually had a real job. There was a restaurant that also rented bikes. So I grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey. And in Ocean City, you could ride your bike on the boardwalk until 11 o'clock, I think. And so up until 11, we would rent bikes all morning long. And with probably 10% of the job was working with customers, collecting the money, etc. The other 90% of the job was bicycle maintenance. And he gave me this, I don't know, it was like part oil, it was this liquid, this part oil, part gasoline, part something else, some sort of grease, and he called it bike juice. And what I would have to do is rub the rust off the bicycle spokes. That was like 90% of this job, because by the ocean, these bikes got like instantly rusty. You'd clean them, and then by the next day they needed to be cleaned again, even if they were coated with, you know, this kind of greasy liquid oil meant to prevent it. So, so you take the steel wool in your hand, you dip it in this awful bike juice concoction, and rub it on the spokes, spoke by spoke by spoke, with the bike upside down doing your thing. And the steel wool would poke holes in my fingers, like through my skin, and the bike juice would infect it, and I was just like in this permanent state of like finger misery sensitivity for probably about 2 years. And my boss was awful. He was like this slave driver, and if I came to work even like 90 seconds late, he would ride me. He would literally yell at me, which wasn't something I was used to. And I eventually quit one morning. I remember, I think I was 2 minutes late, maybe even less than that, and he was giving me a hard time, and I was like, you know, I quit. I'm sorry. This isn't working out, and I don't like it. And I mostly kept the job because my father was proud of the fact that I worked, but it was just kind of psychologically taking its toll on me. The guy was never happy. He was always kind of riding me, and decided to get a new job. So my next job was it was at a place called the Old Salt, and the Old Salt was one of these like boardwalk novelty stores, and they sold like, I don't know, lamps with wooden sailors on them and rubber sharks and I don't know, some Christmas decorations or whatever, you know, retail gift store on a boardwalk. And that was a pretty cool gig. It had air conditioning, which I liked a lot. Girls worked there, and I liked that a lot. And everyone kind of got along, but the pay was lousy. So the next job that I got, I had actually broke my arm, and didn't work for most of a summer, which was freaking glorious. And in the second half of the summer, I got a job renting out umbrellas. So renting out umbrellas was a really cool deal. I used to be a little bit forward, maybe even rude, with regards to asking for tips, and it made me a ton of money. I'd make like $100 some a day in tips, and that was really cool. I loved it, and I loved just being on the beach. I loved being really, really tan. I hadn't had like a savage tan before that job. But even as the umbrella rental guy on the beach, you sit there and say, what's next? And the lifeguard's at the head of the beach. You know, the umbrella rental guy, I got some girls, and I had a tan, and it was nice. But the lifeguards, those guys at the front of the beach, it was clearly their beach. They were the gods of the ocean, and that's who I wanted to be. So to get that job it was kind of a hard deal. Swimmers would come from like all the colleges, like in the Philadelphia area and New York area, and then from high schools too, and they would try out for these positions. The year I tried out, there were 7 openings, so they were hiring 7 people, and 70 people came for the job. So 63, of course, got rejected. And I knew it was hard to do, so I joined my high school swim team for my senior year. And I was a pretty good swimmer headed into it because I was a surfer, but not. I didn't know how to do a flip turn. I didn't know really, any kind of mechanics with regards to swimming. I didn't know how to jump off the block, and I had a lot to learn, but I busted my butt, worked really hard, and I ended up getting 5th in the state by the end of the season, which was a pretty good first season, I thought. So I worked all that, and then through the springtime, I went in the cold ocean. The Ocean City in New Jersey is really cold in the spring. It takes a while for the water to warm up because it's just such a huge body of water. And I'd go out there, I'd row the boats, and I'd swim in the cold ocean. And because there's a transition from pool to ocean swimming, then I'd get that worked out. Anyway, to get this job, athletic competition. There's no interview or anything. I'm not sure if I just said that. And I got the job. So it was pretty cool. I ended up getting first place. As I went to the first day of tryouts, I actually went with my mother. And she came home to leave me alone and not embarrass me, and told the rest of my family that it was hopeless, that it wasn't going to happen, because she looked at my body type and she looked at the body types of, say, the college guys and said, he doesn't stand a chance. It's not going to happen. And I probably wouldn't have finished top 10% like I did if it were a pool meet. But I lived at the ocean, and I was a beach rat. And, some of the events, like sprinting straight out into the water, I had done 1,000,000 times. Whereas for these guys, it was a new skill. And navigating in deep water, like you had to swim, I think, a half mile out, then swim the half mile back. They had never navigated deep water like that before, whereas for me, I was pretty good at it. So I actually got first place out of the 70 tryouts. I don't think I would have got that if it were a pool meet, I mean to say. But in the ocean, that was my domain, and I did really well. So I did that job for a while. And I saved 130 lives. I talked about that on the podcast once over the course of 4 years. So I averaged, about 20, 30 saves a year. And that was really neat. So after that wrapped up, I became what I guess I'll say is a junior accountant. I worked in my father's accounting firm, and I went to night school. My major was accounting, but I didn't really like it. Accounting was totally not for me. And within a few weeks, I was like packing away money in my retirement fund, trying to figure out how to make this stop. And I did have a love for computers, though, like a serious passion for it. So I picked up a second major, which was MIS, and then even in the accounting firm, while I did some accounting, I also did a lot of, computer work for the firm. It was in the early 90s, and they were just switching from all paper-based systems to computer-based tax returns, and all their customers were switching over from their checkbooks to systems like Peachtree or QuickBooks or what have you. So I would set them up, and I would set the firm up, and I got a lot of computer experience, even though I was working as an accountant, say the other half of the time. Then my next job was a hard one. So I got this job at a place called Railroad Construction Company, and my title was manager of accounts payable, which is, all the bills that a construction company would have to pay. But the truth is, I didn't really manage anyone. There was one guy, he was part-time, and he didn't have any finance background. I think he was actually a priest or something like that. And that was the only job I've ever been fired from. So I worked so hard. I would work probably like 110 hours a week, something along those lines. And I also went to school at night while I worked 110 hours a week, and school was a few hours away, and I actually failed every class one of those semesters because I just worked nonstop. Every minute that I was awake was a minute I spent, working on either school or my actual job. So, after he actually he fired me, and he also offered to be a positive reference for my next job. He's like, look, you're a really hard worker, but this just isn't for you. And when I look back and try to analyze my real mistake in that, it was these guys would not submit their paperwork, and I would cover for them, and it would make so much more work for me. And I think the me of today would have, gotten those guys into shape. But the me of back then let the company suffer and let myself suffer, and I was stupid. So after that job, I got a job working in the support department for a software company, and then I had a series of jobs where I would just switch, and like every time I got a job where I could make like $2 grand more, I'd just leave and go there instead. I was like insulted that I wasn't making the absolute maximum out of my pay. And then worked for QAD for a couple of years, and they were another software company. They wrote ERP software, so this is software that manages the operations of a big company, and I was a computer programmer for them. And then I moved on to my current company, which I'm not going to name because, you know, people on the internet can be trolls, but it's a great big Fortune 500 company. I've been there 11 years, and you start off as a programmer. After a couple promotions, you make your way to what they call a software architect, and I think now my title is a senior software architect. And what I do is I lay out how to build systems, and then in some cases I work with the implementation teams and lead them till the actual code is finished being written. So yeah, that's my career, and I hope that you guys found this somewhat interesting.